Good evening. Welcome back to Sports Talk ATL. I am Chase Earl, joined by Alex Lord. Later in the show, DJ Shockley is going to join us to talk about the Georgia Bulldogs and the Alabama Crimson Tide. He's also going to help us break down the Falcons' upcoming matchup with the Jets. We do have an NBA rumor, Pascal Siakam. We talked about that a lot this offseason. That is now back to light. The Hawks are reportedly monitoring the situation. We'll talk about that later in the show. But we're going to start off with an MLB rumor. Now, this is something that was brought up a couple days. We've talked about it this offseason as Dylan Cease as a potential option. Bob Nightingale reported that the Braves are involved in trade discussions. And now John Morosi of MLB Network is reporting that they are one of the finalists. Now, Ken Rosenthal also just wrote this morning that the White Sox could play the waiting game. So this is probably going to be something we're going to have to wait on. And the White Sox, unless they get a deal that they're blown away with, they should play the waiting game. I mean, Yamamoto's still on the market. Snell's still on the market. Montgomery's still on the market. Tons of guys still on the market. There's no reason for them to jump the gun. As teams get more desperate, the deals will get better. So if you're expecting something to get done in the next few days, like Morosi originally reported, I wouldn't expect that. The Braves would have to blow them away with the offer. And when we're talking about blow them away with the offer, it would have to include A.J. Smith-Shawver and Hurston Waldrop, because I don't see any other offer that would flat out blow them away, that they wouldn't even speak to other teams around.
Yeah, this is just a feeling. And it feels like the longer it gets dragged on, the less likely the Braves are going to come out winners, just because it feels like Alex Anthopoulos isn't the type of guy who wants to get, stuck holding his pockets, on the last call where, he can't up the ante and they go with another when the Chris goes with another offer. So it feels like the longer it gets dragged on, the less likely it feels like the Braves are going to come out victorious in this trade. That's just a feeling. That's not, I had nothing to base that on. It just feels like Alex Anthopoulos' MO that he's not going to leave something to chance. But obviously, this is great news. The word finalist, and the Braves were the only team that Morosi mentioned. The main report was basically that trade talks are heating up, and Braves are among the finalists. Obviously, there's multiple finalists that are in contention to get Cease, but I think it's just interesting that the Braves were the only team mentioned. Now, obviously, we know Alex Anthopoulos and his regime. Everything is close to the vest. So that's not to say that this came out from our side, maybe, the White Sox side or another team's side that's also in the running. Make that what you will. But I do just think it's noteworthy. Obviously, adding Cease to this rotation, I mean, I don't even need to elaborate on how big of a move that would make. It would definitely give Atlanta the best pitching staff after we bolstered the bullpen early in the offseason with the best returning lineup in MLB history. It would just be an all-star juggernaut team. KD joining the Warriors back years ago. It would be absolutely amazing. He is a Boris client, so the thought of an extension is very unlikely if a trade does come to fruition. What Braves fans can hold their hats on is, potentially Cease, which has never really been done before, forces Boris's hand to get an extension done because he's from Milton, Georgia, probably grew up a Braves fan, as most people did in the South if they played baseball. So they, there is some chance. I wouldn't, take it to the bank, but 2 years of control for an ace is nothing to, scoff at. That is, maximizing your championship possibilities in these 2 years to the maximum. So obviously this is a situation to monitor, but am I wrong to say that the longer it goes on, the less likely it feels like the Braves are not going to come out on top of this? Or is that just...
No, I think you're right. That's actually the point that I wanted to stick on. I've talked enough about Dylan Cease. If you've watched this channel, if you've watched this show, you know how I feel about Dylan Cease. That's my top target. It was my top target regardless of free agency or trades. That's who I wanted the Braves to go out there and get. And that's not going to change. I think you're right in the sense that he's not going to get, holding it, he doesn't want to get left shorthanded, right? If all the other guys come off the board and then you don't get Dylan Cease, now you don't have any other options really to turn to that you might like. Maybe he doesn't want to go after a Glasnow or maybe Burns isn't on the market. So he might not like the option of an injury-prone Tyler Glasnow or something like that. So if they don't accept the offer that the Braves feel is fair and on the table, and if the Braves don't feel like they're going to, especially if the Braves don't feel like they're going to up that offer, he is going to go out, turn to the free agency market, and grab the guy that he wants, because I'm sure they're having those conversations as well. So these things are going on at the same time. You saw you saw a very similar situation play out with Matt Olson. Listen, Freddie Freeman waited too long. He didn't want the asking price for Matt Olson to all of a sudden jump out of the thing. He pulled the trigger on Olson. Freeman goes elsewhere, even though he hadn't yet made his decision. So I think you're very right on that. He's going to make the decision. He's going to give him probably his final offer at some point that he's not going to up regardless of what happens with the other free agents. And if they do not take it, he's going to pull the trigger on whatever deal he has in place with whoever he is on the free agent market that he prefers. So I think that's really the thing. And I think you're 100% right on that. I don't necessarily know about the length of it, but he's not going to wait until everybody that he likes falls off the board and then, rely solely on Dylan Cease and that deal coming to fruition or him having nobody.
Yeah, I think in the same breath, and I know I'm kind of contradicting myself, in that same breath, a lot of GMs are thinking this exact same way. Nobody in the world, regardless of, the facet, the industry you're in, you don't want to get stuck holding your pockets. It's not just Anthopoulos, though he may, stick to that more strictly than other GMs. I think that could be said for a lot of GMs. So somebody like the Dodgers or the Cubs or the Mets, pretty much everybody wants a starter, especially somebody like Dylan Cease. The same could be said on the opposite end where, they go and get a Shohei Ohtani who they think fills that void, maybe not this year, but in the future, Yamamoto, a Jordan Montgomery. So, as free agents come off the market in that same breath, it could affect the trade compensation for the White Sox because maybe some of the suitors who were initially in on Dylan Cease also think the same thing. I don't want to get caught with my pants around my ankles. I'm going to go out and get a Yamamoto, get a Jordan Montgomery, get whoever they think is going to fill that void. And maybe, there are some people who just drop out of the sweepstakes for Dylan Cease. So, it might be a yin and yang type thing that, obviously the winter meetings are going to accelerate everything, free agent deal, trade talks and everything like that. So that is maybe another interesting factor in all of this.
Yeah, it's really just like what do the White Sox prefer? Do they prefer desperation from two teams or do they prefer 7 teams in the mix? So because that's really what it's going to come down to. And you're right. If one of those teams is going to go out and someone's got to sign these free agents, right? And they sign the free agent, they're probably out of the Dylan Cease sweepstakes. So I think both of those things are correct. And we'll see how this plays out. Coming up after the break, DJ Shockley is going to join us to break out the huge matchup here in Atlanta, the SEC Championship.